The night was dark and heavy with silence. Snow fell in thick sheets covering the small town in white. Wind howled through the empty streets, carrying with it the sharp bite of winter. Inside a small wooden house at the edge of town, a man sat alone by the fire. His name was Daniel. He lived a quiet life, far away from the noise of the city. Daniel enjoyed silence, but that night the silence felt different. It was too deep, too heavy. The crackling of the fire was the only sound. He sipped his hot tea, his eyes half closed, when suddenly, knock, knock, knock. The sound broke the stillness like glass shattering. Daniel froze. Who could be at his door on a night like this? He wasn't expecting anyone. The roads were covered in ice, and no neighbor would walk in this storm. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. Then again, knock, knock. This time softer, weaker, almost like whoever stood outside was running out of strength. Daniel stood up slowly, his heart beating faster. He took the lamp from the table and walked to the door. The wind screamed louder, as if warning him not to open it. His hand hovered over the handle. He hesitated. What if it was trouble? But the knock came again, so faint he almost didn't hear it. Whoever it was, they sounded desperate. Daniel sighed and pulled the door open. Cold air rushed inside, stinging his skin. Snowflakes swirled in, and there, standing in the doorway, was a girl. She was young, maybe in her late teens. Her clothes were thin and torn, not made for winter. Her lips trembled, and her whole body shook as if she had been walking in the snow for hours. Her hair was wet, sticking to her pale face. But what caught Daniel's eyes were her eyes. They were not human. They glowed faintly in the dark. A strange silver light, almost like the stars themselves, were trapped inside. For a moment, Daniel could not speak. He just stared. The girl opened her mouth, but her voice was weak, almost breaking. Please, help me. Her knees gave out and she fell forward. Daniel caught her before she hit the floor. Her body was freezing cold, like ice. He pulled her inside quickly and shut the door against the storm. He laid her near the fire. She curled up, shivering violently. Daniel rushed to bring her a blanket, wrapping it around her. Her skin was pale, too pale, and those glowing eyes never stopped watching him, even as she trembled. Who are you? Daniel whispered. The girl didn't answer. She just shook her head, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Her breathing was fast, scared. Daniel poured a cup of hot tea and held it out to her. At first she didn't move. Then slowly, with shaking hands, she took it and sipped. Steam rose around her face, and for the first time her shaking began to slow. But her eyes never left the door, as if something out there was still hunting her. Daniel noticed. What's wrong? Are you in trouble? She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with fear. Her lips moved, and she whispered so softly he almost didn't hear it. They will find me. A chill colder than the winter storm ran down Daniel's spine. He glanced at the window. The snow outside was falling harder, hiding everything in white. The night was too quiet again. Only the wind screamed. He turned back to her. She was holding the blanket tightly, almost hiding inside it, but her eyes betrayed her fear. She was not only cold, she was running from something dangerous. Daniel sat near the fire, watching her carefully. He wanted to ask more questions. Where she came from, why she was here, why her eyes glowed like that. But he could see she was too weak, too frightened to answer. For now it was enough that she was alive. He stirred the fire, adding more wood. The flames rose higher, casting long shadows across the room, shadows that seemed to move in strange shapes on the walls, making Daniel uneasy. The girl's breathing slowed. Her eyelids dropped heavy with exhaustion. She tried to fight it, but finally gave in. She leaned against the chair and fell asleep, still clutching the blanket. Daniel sat in silence, staring at her. A part of him wanted to believe this was just some strange dream, that in the morning she would be gone and life would return to normal. But deep inside, he knew the truth. Nothing about this night was normal. The girl was not ordinary, and if she was right, if someone or something was looking for her, then his quiet life was about to change forever. Outside, the wind howled like a beast in the dark. Snow slammed against the windows, hiding the world in white. But Daniel could not shake the feeling that something was out there, watching, searching. The fire popped loudly, and the girl stirred in her sleep, whispering words in a language Daniel did not know. Her last words before drifting deeper into unconsciousness echoed in his mind. They will find me. And Daniel realized, with a cold shiver, that the knock on his door was only the beginning. The storm outside did not rest. Wind pushed against the wooden walls, snow rattled on the glass windows, and the night grew darker by the minute. Inside the house, Daniel sat awake, staring at the girl who had collapsed by his fire only an hour before. She was sleeping now, wrapped in blankets, but even in sleep her face looked troubled. Her breathing came in uneven bursts, and sometimes her lips moved, whispering strange words in a language Daniel could not understand. He leaned forward, trying to catch the sound, but it was too soft, like the whisper of leaves. Then, her eyes opened. Those silver, glowing eyes locked on him again, sharp and full of fear. She sat up quickly, clutching the blanket as though it was her shield. Daniel raised his hand slowly. "It's all right," he said. "You're safe here." The girl looked around the room as if expecting danger to crawl from the shadows. Her shoulders trembled, but this time not from the cold. Something deeper shook her, fear that lived in her bones. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was soft, cracked, but clear. "You should not have opened the door." Daniel frowned. "Why? They will come." "They always come." She hugged the blanket tighter. "Now they will search you too." Her words made Daniel's chest tighten. He had wanted a simple answer, maybe her name, maybe where she came from. But her words were like a warning, like a curse dropped into his quiet life. "Who will come?" he asked carefully. Her lips trembled. For a long time she said nothing. She looked at the fire, at the small orange flames licking the wood, then in a whisper, "My hunters." Daniel felt a chill colder than the storm creep down his spine. Hunters. The word carried danger, violence. He imagined faceless men in black coats searching through the snow. But the truth was worse. As she spoke, her trembling hands shifted the blanket, and for the first time Daniel saw the faint marks on her skin. Glowing lines, almost like scars, ran across her arms and neck. They were not tattoos, not anything human. They pulsed faintly like veins carrying silver light. Daniel could not stop staring. "What are you?" he whispered before he could control the words. The girl looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the fire. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not from here." Daniel leaned back slowly, his breath caught. "Not from here." He didn't need her to explain further. The truth was clear, even though his mind screamed against it. She was not human. Silence filled the room, broken only by the storm outside. The girl's voice was sharp when she spoke again. "You should send me away, forget me. If they know you helped me, you will die too." Daniel studied her carefully. Her words were cold, but her voice cracked with sadness. She didn't want him hurt. She wanted to protect him by leaving, but Daniel was not the kind of man who abandoned someone at his door. "I can't do that," he said firmly. "It's freezing outside. You wouldn't last an hour." Her eyes softened, almost surprised. "Why?" Daniel paused, searching for words. "Because you knocked. Because you asked for help. And humans don't leave someone to die in the snow." For the first time, her lips curved into something like a smile, small and broken, but real. Yet her eyes still carried fear. "They will not stop," she said. "They have machines that can smell my trail. They will come to this town, to this house, to you." Her words filled the air with dread. Daniel felt it too, the sense that unseen eyes were already moving through the storm, searching, closing in. "Then tell me what they want," he said. "Why are they after you?" The girl hesitated again. Her hand brushed the glowing marks on her arm as if ashamed. "I ran away," she whispered. "I was not supposed to. They owned me. My life was not mine." Her voice cracked, almost breaking. "But I escaped. I followed the stars until I fell here." Daniel's breath caught, escaped, owned. She was a prisoner, a runaway. And now those who had lost her were hunting. He leaned closer. "So they're not human either?" She shook her head slowly. "Not human, not kind. If they find me, they will take me back. If they see you with me?" Her voice faded, but her meaning was clear. "They would kill him." Daniel sat back in his chair, staring at the fire. His mind raced. The quiet life he had lived for years was gone. At any moment, creatures from another world could knock on his door, and this time it would not be a half-frozen girl. The girl whispered again, softer this time, almost to herself. "I thought humans would be cruel too, but you opened your door." Daniel met her gaze. And I don't regret it." She looked at him with something like awe, as if she could not understand the choice he had made. Outside, the storm grew heavier. The windows rattled. Snow covered the world in silence, but Daniel felt no peace. The girl's words echoed in his mind. "They will come." And as the firelight flickered across her glowing eyes, Daniel realized he believed her. He believed every word. Somewhere in the storm, her hunters were already moving closer. The storm outside did not calm. Hours passed, but the wind still roared like a living thing. Snow piled higher against the windows, and the world beyond the house disappeared into a wall of white. Daniel had not slept. He sat by the fire, his eyes sharp, his ears listening for every sound beyond the storm. The girl, wrapped in blankets, had finally drifted into a restless sleep. Her glowing marks dimmed slightly, but even in slumber her body twitched, as if she dreamed of being hunted. Daniel's mind churned with questions. Who were these hunters? How far had they come? Could they even survive this storm? And then, as if the night had heard his thoughts, a sound came, not the wind, not the snow, a low hum, mechanical, strange. Daniel's breath froze in his chest. He stood and moved to the window. He wiped the frost from the glass with his sleeve and squinted into the storm. For a moment he saw nothing but white, then movement, shadows, figures moving through the snow with steady steps, tall, dark, not human. The sound grew clearer now, like a faint vibration in the air. It wasn't just footsteps, it was machines whirring softly as they cut through the storm. Daniel turned sharply. The girl was awake, sitting up, her glowing eyes wide with terror. "They found me," she whispered. Daniel felt his chest tighten. The ordinary life he had clung to was gone forever. He glanced at the fire, at the walls of his small home, at the girl shivering under the blanket. He had no weapons, no training, no reason to believe he could stand against beings from another world. But she had knocked on his door, and that meant he could not turn her away. "Where can we hide?" he asked quickly. The girl shook her head. "They will search. They can sense me." Her voice trembled. "You must give me up. If you do, they will leave you alive." Daniel looked at her, and something inside him hardened. Not happening. Her eyes widened, but before she could speak again, knock, knock, knock. The sound echoed through the house. Daniel's blood ran cold. It was the same rhythm. The same sound as before, but heavier. Stronger. Not the weak knocking of a freezing girl. This was something else. The girl's hand gripped his sleeve. "Do not open," she begged. "If you open, you are dead." Daniel's mind raced. He could hear more movement outside, crunching through the snow. Shapes passed near the window, tall silhouettes with glowing eyes of their own. Another knock. Louder. The wooden door shook. Daniel swallowed hard. He knew if he stayed silent, they might break the door down. If he opened it, at least he had a chance to control the moment. He looked back at the girl. She was trembling, her silver eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Trust me," Daniel whispered. He stood, walked to the door, and placed his hand on the handle. His heart thundered in his chest. He opened it slowly. Cold air rushed in. On his porch stood 3 figures. They were tall, thin, their skin a dull, metallic shade that glistened in the snow. Their faces were hidden beneath masks of dark glass, but bright red lights shone where eyes should be. Each carried a staff that pulsed with energy, humming in the storm. One of them stepped forward. His voice was deep, mechanical, vibrating through the air. "Human. You have something that belongs to us." Daniel forced his face calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." The figure tilted his head. "Do not lie. Our trackers bring us here. The mark is inside this structure. Give it to us and we will spare your life." Behind Daniel, the girl's sharp breath broke the silence. The hunters heard it. One of them stepped closer. Daniel blocked the doorway. "No one here but me." The red eyes glowed brighter. "You protect it, curious." Daniel's palms were sweaty, but he didn't move. "You're mistaken." For a long moment the hunters were silent. The storm howled between them. Then the leader leaned closer. "You are a fragile species, and yet bold." The words were almost mocking. But then he straightened, turning to the others. "Search." 2 hunters stepped off the porch, moving toward the windows, the back door. Daniel's chest pounded. The leader faced him again. "Step aside, human. Do not make us break you." Daniel knew he had seconds. If they entered, the girl was finished. He forced a slow smile.
"Funny. You think you can just walk into my home?"
The hunter tilted his head again, confused by the human's calm tone. Daniel's hand moved behind the doorframe where he had hidden the heavy iron poker from the fireplace. His grip tightened. He didn't know if he could fight them. He didn't know if it would matter, but humans were stubborn creatures. Before the hunter could speak again, Daniel slammed the door shut and dropped the heavy lock into place. The girl gasped. "What are you doing?" "Buying us time," he said, his voice grim. Outside, the hunter struck the door with a booming thud. The walls shook. Snow fell from the roof. "They will break through," the girl cried. "Then we make them regret it," Daniel answered. The storm outside screamed louder, as if the world itself warned of what was about to come. Inside the small wooden house, a human and an alien girl prepared for the moment when the hunters would finally crash through the door. And in that moment, Daniel understood something new. He was no longer just protecting a stranger. He was standing against the unknown. The door shook under the heavy blows. Dust drifted down from the ceiling as if the house itself groaned in fear. The storm outside roared, but inside, the only sound was the thudding strikes of the hunters and the pounding of Daniel's heart. The girl pressed her back against the wall, clutching the blanket around her. Her silver eyes glowed brighter in terror. "They will tear the house apart," she whispered. Daniel grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace and tightened his grip. His hands were sweaty, his breath shallow, but his eyes were steady. "Then let them try." The girl stared at him as if he were insane. "You cannot fight them. You are only human. They are stronger, faster, armed with—" Daniel cut her off with a small, grim smile. "I don't need to be stronger. I just need to be smarter." The words hung heavy in the air. Another booming strike shook the door, the wooden frame beginning to crack. Daniel moved quickly. He pulled a chair across the room and jammed it under the door handle. Then he grabbed a heavy lantern and placed it near the window, its flame flickering in the storm's shadow. "What are you doing?" the girl asked, her voice tight. "Making them think," Daniel said. "If they think I'm afraid, they win. If they think I'm weak, they win. But if they start wondering what tricks I have—" He gave her a sharp look. "That gives us a chance." The girl blinked, confusion mixing with fear. She had never seen defiance like this before. Among her people, no one stood against the hunters. No one dared. Yet here was a human standing in a small wooden house facing creatures from the stars as if they were just another danger in the night. The door banged again, harder this time. A deep crack split the wood. Snow whirled in through the gap. Daniel raised his voice. "You hear me out there? You want to come in? Then know this. Humans don't give up what's under their roof." The girl gasped. "You're taunting them?" Daniel's eyes never left the door. "I'm buying fear. Even a little doubt slows a hunter." Silence followed his words. For a moment, the pounding stopped. The storm outside howled, and in that pause, Daniel knew they were listening. Then a voice came through the crack in the door. Cold metallic, vibrating with anger. "You are fragile. You will die for her." Daniel lifted the poker like a sword. His voice was calm, steady. "Maybe. But you'll have to bleed me first." The girl's breath caught. She had never heard such courage spoken so simply. The door cracked wider and a glowing red eye peered in. The hunter hissed, the sound sharp like metal grinding against stone. Daniel's mind raced. He couldn't hold them forever. He needed time. He turned to the girl. "Is there any way to hide your light, the marks?" She shook her head, ashamed. "They are part of me. They will always see." Daniel clenched his jaw. He thought fast. Humans were not the strongest species, not the fastest, but they were survivors. They turned weakness into weapons. He grabbed the lantern by the window and hurled it to the floor. The flame exploded against the wood, fire crawling upward. The girl gasped, but Daniel's eyes burned with purpose. "Smoke," he said. "They track you, but maybe their machines don't like smoke and heat." The hunters outside hissed again, this time stepping back. The fire spread across the room, filling it with thick, choking air. The girl coughed, pulling the blanket over her mouth. "You will burn your own home?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "A house is wood and stone. A life is more." For a long moment, the hunters outside stayed still, their machines humming uneasily in the storm. The smoke confused them, their red eyes flickering in the snow. Daniel turned to the girl. "Go out the back. Stay low," her eyes widened. "You'll face them alone?" Daniel gripped the poker tighter. "That's what humans do. We stand when we shouldn't." The girl hesitated, torn between running and staying. Her people had always told her humans were fragile, weak, easily broken. But this man stood in fire and storm with nothing but iron in his hand and fire in his heart. "Finally," she whispered, "I will not forget this." She slipped toward the back, disappearing into the shadows of the smoke. Daniel stood alone now, facing the door as it finally splintered and burst open. The hunters stepped through, tall and terrible, their red eyes glowing in the firelight. Daniel raised his poker, his chest rising and falling. He was only human, but in that moment he was more dangerous than any machine. "Welcome to my house," he said, his voice low and unshaken. The hunters advanced, but their steps slowed. They had faced many enemies across the stars, but never one like this. A human, fragile in body but unbreakable in spirit. The fire roared behind him. The storm screamed outside, and Daniel stood tall, ready to fight, and the alien girl, crawling through the snow at the back of the house, turned once to look at the flickering light of the fire and whispered to herself, "Humans are not weak." The fire burned bright, smoke curling through the broken doorframe. Daniel stood ready with the iron poker, his chest heaving, sweat mixing with the heat and fear. The hunters moved slowly inside, their red eyes glowing, their tall frames casting shadows against the flames. But when they advanced, they did not strike. They stopped, tilting their heads as though confused by him. "Strange," one said, its voice mechanical, hollow. "A human chooses death." Daniel didn't flinch. "A human chooses freedom," the hunters hissed, the sound echoing like metal scraping. One raised his staff, but before the blow fell, a shrill whistle cut through the night. All three hunters froze. Their glowing eyes flickered, then they stepped back. In a synchronized motion, they turned and vanished into the storm, their figures swallowed by the snow. Daniel lowered the poker, his arms trembling from adrenaline. He leaned against the wall, coughing as smoke filled the room. The fire had already spread too far. His house, his quiet life, everything he owned, it was burning, but she was safe. He ran out the back door into the snow. Cold air hit him like ice, and his breath came fast in the freezing wind. He stumbled through the white haze until he saw her. The girl was on her knees, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the storm. She was waiting for him. When Daniel reached her, she grabbed his arm. "Why?" she whispered, voice breaking. "Why risk yourself? You don't even know who I am." Daniel pulled her up. "Then tell me." For a long time she was silent. Snowflakes clung to her hair, her skin glowing faintly against the storm. Finally she spoke, her voice fragile but steady. "My name is Elira," she said. "I was born far from this world. Born into chains." Daniel frowned. "Chains?" She nodded. "My people are ruled by the Dominion, a great empire that controls many worlds. I was not just born under their rule, I was born their property." Her words struck like knives. Daniel tightened his jaw. "Property, you mean? A slave?" Elira's eyes dimmed with shame. "Worse, I was bred for power. The marks you see?" She pulled the blanket away, showing the glowing lines along her arms and neck. "They are not scars. They are the Dominion's brand. They made me into something more than a servant. They made me into a weapon." Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at the glowing marks, at the faint pulse of light beneath her skin. "A weapon?" "Yes," she whispered. "My blood carries energy they desire. My voice can command machines. My touch can fuel their war engines. To them, I am not alive. I am a tool, a battery, a voice for their destruction." Her words hung in the cold air. Daniel stared, his mind racing. She looked so fragile, shivering in the snow, but inside her was power enough to shake empires. "And you escaped?" he said quietly. Elira's lips trembled. "I could not live as their slave. I broke free during transport. I stole a vessel, but it crashed here. I thought maybe humans would be different." Her glowing eyes lifted to his. "But I feared I was wrong, until you opened the door." Daniel looked at her, at the fear and hope warring inside her gaze. He had never asked for this. He was just one man in a small town, yet here he stood with the galaxy's most wanted fugitive leaning on him, hunted by creatures beyond his understanding. "You're not wrong," he said firmly. "Humans don't own people, not here. Not ever." Her breath shook. For the first time, true tears welled in her eyes, silver drops glimmering against the snow. She wiped them away quickly, ashamed of her weakness. Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure this out, together." But before she could answer, the wind shifted. A distant hum rose again, deeper this time. Many hums. Machines moving closer. Her eyes widened. They called for more. Daniel turned toward the sound. Through the storm, faint red lights flickered, dozens this time. The hunters were not retreating. They had gone to gather reinforcements. Elira's voice broke with panic. "There will be more than you can fight, more than this world can hide. If they find me, they will burn this town to ash. They will burn your people." Daniel's jaw tightened. He thought of his quiet life, of the neighbors asleep in their homes, unaware of the danger walking toward them. He thought of the fire behind him, of everything already lost. And then he thought of her words, a weapon, a slave, property. He clenched his fists. "Then we make sure they don't find you." Her eyes searched his face. "You cannot fight them all." "No," Daniel admitted. "But humans don't fight fair." Elira tilted her head, confused. Daniel looked at the snow-covered woods stretching beyond. He saw the steep cliffs, the frozen rivers, the hidden caves, places only a human who had lived his whole life here would know. He looked back at her, determination burning in his eyes. "If they want a hunt, we'll give them one." The storm howled louder, as if echoing his words. Elira's heart pounded. She had fled countless worlds, seen empires bend in silence before the dominion, but never had she seen anyone, any species, stand in defiance for her. In that moment, she realized something terrifying and wonderful. Humans were not the strongest, not the most advanced, not the fastest, but humans had something else. They had courage sharp enough to cut through fear, and courage was more dangerous than any weapon. The storm raged, but even its roar could not hide the hum of machines. Red lights flickered in the distance, moving slowly through the snow like hunting eyes. Daniel and Elira crouched near the tree line behind his burning house. Smoke billowed upward, black against the white storm. The hunters had spread out, searching, their tall frames cutting through the blizzard without struggle. "They will not stop," Elira whispered, her voice trembling. "They can track my marks. They can smell the energy in my blood." Daniel's breath formed clouds in the freezing air. He scanned the woods, thinking fast. "Then we make it harder for them." She shook her head. "You do not understand. No one escapes the Dominion." Daniel's jaw tightened. Maybe no one tried hard enough. For a moment, silence hung between them, filled only by the wind. Elira stared at him, at the strange fire in his eyes. Fragile human standing against an empire. Foolish, and yet not foolish at all. Daniel turned, pointing to the cliffs beyond the trees. "There's an old cave system in those rocks. If we reach it, the storm will cover our tracks. Smoke and fire from the house might confuse their machines." Elira's eyes widened. "You know these lands well." Daniel gave a short nod. "Every path, every frozen river, every place they don't belong." She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust. But fear coiled in her chest. "If they catch you, they will not show mercy." Daniel gripped the iron poker still in his hand. "I don't need mercy. I need time." He pulled her toward the trees, their boots sinking in deep snow. The storm bit at their faces. But Daniel moved with purpose, ducking behind branches, stepping on rocks instead of snow where he could, leaving broken patterns to mislead any tracker. Behind them, the hunters reached his home. Through the trees, red lights flashed as they scanned the ruins. One knelt, pressing its hand to the ground. The machine in its palm blinked red, following a faint signal. "They are moving," Elira whispered, panic in her voice. "They will follow." Daniel's breath came heavy, but his mind worked quickly. He pulled off his heavy coat, leaving only his thick sweater beneath. He thrust the coat into her arms. "Take this. Go through the woods toward the caves. I'll circle around." Her silver eyes widened. "No, alone they will kill you." Daniel shook his head. "Alone I can distract them. They think humans are weak. I'll make them chase me." Her hand gripped his tightly. "Why risk everything for me?" Daniel looked at her, his breath sharp in the cold. "Because you knocked. Because you asked." That's enough. Her chest ached with something she didn't understand. No one in the galaxy would risk themselves for her. Not her people, not slaves, not rebels. But this man, this fragile human, stood between her and death without hesitation. She whispered, "Humans are strange." Daniel gave a faint smile. "We're stubborn. Now go." Reluctantly she ran, her glowing marks hidden under his coat. Her figure vanished into the snow, moving toward the cliffs. Daniel turned the other way. He ran across the open ground, stamping his boots deep into the snow, leaving a clear trail. He smashed a branch against a tree, leaving splinters behind. He dragged the iron poker, carving marks into the ground. He made himself a beacon. And the hunters noticed. Red eyes flashed through the storm, locking onto the human trail. Their machines beeped in confirmation, following the loud, messy signs he had left behind. Daniel ran harder, his lungs burning in the cold air. His boots crunched on the frozen river as he leapt from stone to stone. Behind him, the hunters closed in, their heavy steps unbothered by snow or ice. One raised its staff. A bolt of red energy shot past him, slamming into a tree. The trunk exploded in sparks and ash. Daniel dove behind a rock, heart hammering. "So they've got toys," he muttered. He tightened his grip on the poker. "So do I." He picked up a handful of snow, packed it tight, and threw it across the river. The sound echoed like footsteps. The hunters split, two moving toward the noise while one followed his real path. Good. Confusion was a weapon. He ran again, ducking into a narrow gorge. The storm funneled through it, blinding in its force, but Daniel knew the land. He pressed against the cliff wall, covering his mouth to hide his breath. The hunter's red eye scanned the gorge, but the snow and smoke clouded its sensors. Daniel waited until it turned away, then hurled a rock at its head. The sound cracked sharp. The hunter spun, firing blindly. The shot blasted the cliff, sending snow crashing down in an avalanche. The hunter was buried. Daniel panted, leaning on the rock. He couldn't kill them all, but he could slow them. Far off, he saw the cliffs where Elira would be waiting. He forced his tired legs to move again, each step slower than the last. Finally, he reached the caves. Elira was there, standing at the entrance, her eyes wide with relief. She rushed to him, holding his arm. "You came back." Daniel gave a tired grin. "Told you, stubborn." She helped him inside the dark cave. The storm's howl faded, replaced by the dripping sound of ice melting. Shadows wrapped around them. For the first time, they were hidden, but Elira's face was still tense. "They will not stop, Daniel. They will come again. With more." Daniel slumped against the wall, breathing hard, his poker still in his hand, his eyes still sharp despite exhaustion. "Then we'll keep moving," he said. "Trap after trap, trick after trick, until they learn." "Learn what?" she asked softly. Daniel met her glowing eyes. "That humans don't run forever. Sometimes we fight back." Elira stared at him, her heart pounding. For the first time, she began to believe something impossible. Maybe the hunters had made a mistake. Maybe they should never have followed her to this world. The cave was dark and silent. The storm muffled outside. Daniel leaned against the stone wall, his breath heavy, his clothes damp with sweat and snow. Beside him, Elira crouched low, her silver eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. For a moment, there was peace. Only the drip of melting ice echoed inside the cave. But peace never lasted. A low hum trembled through the ground. Machines, engines, dozens of them. Elira's hands clenched into fists. They brought more. Daniel forced himself to stand. His body ached, but his spirit burned. "Good, that means they're afraid." She stared at him, shocked. "Afraid? They are the Dominion's hunters. They fear nothing." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Then maybe they've never met humans before. The sound outside grew louder, metal feet crunching on snow, voices sharp and cold. Red lights flickered against the cave entrance. The hunters were closing in. Elira's chest rose fast with panic. "If they find us here, we are trapped. They will burn this place to ash." Daniel looked around the cave. His eyes caught the sharp icicles hanging from the ceiling, the cracks in the rock, the unstable walls. His lips curved into a tired, dangerous smile. "Maybe. Or maybe we bury them." Elira blinked. "Bury?" Daniel lifted the iron poker and pointed upward. "Ice and stone. Heavy enough to crush metal. They think machines make them stronger, but nature doesn't care about machines." For the first time, Elira's fear flickered into something else. Hope. The hunters entered the mouth of the cave. their red eyes scanning the dark. Their staffs glowed, humming with energy. Daniel grabbed Elira's hand and pulled her deeper inside, their boots echoing against the stone floor. The hunters followed, their machines tracking her glowing marks. The cave grew tighter, the walls narrow, the ceiling heavy with ice. Daniel stopped, placing her behind him. The hunters marched closer. "You cannot hide," one said, its voice vibrating through the rock. "The Dominion takes what it owns." Daniel raised his poker, his voice steady. "Humans don't bow to owners. Not now, not ever." The hunters advanced, their red eyes gleaming brighter. Daniel's grip tightened. He hurled a rock at the ceiling. The stone cracked. Snow and ice rained down, but only a little. The hunters didn't even flinch. One of them hissed, mocking. "You are weak." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Maybe, but weakness makes us clever." He slammed the poker against the wall with all his strength. A sharp crack echoed like thunder. The ceiling groaned. More ice shattered, falling heavier this time. The hunters raised their staffs, but the distraction worked. "Now!" Daniel shouted. Elira stepped forward, her eyes blazing silver. Her voice rose in a sharp, strange tone, speaking words Daniel couldn't understand. The glowing marks on her skin pulsed with power. The Dominion had branded her to be their weapon. Tonight she used it against them. The cave itself trembled. The ice cracked wider. Huge chunks of rock split free from the ceiling. The hunters fired their weapons, red beams slicing the dark, but it was too late. The cave collapsed. The roar was deafening. Ice and stone thundered down, crushing machines, silencing voices. The ground shook as the weight of the mountain itself buried the hunters under tons of frozen earth. When the noise faded, smoke and dust filled the air. Daniel coughed hard, shielding Elira with his body. Silence. No more humming machines. No more glowing red eyes. Only the sound of the storm outside, far away. Elira trembled, staring at the ruins. You made me see it. I thought they could not be beaten." Daniel wiped blood from his lip, his chest rising and falling. "Nothing is unbeatable. Not if you refuse to give up." Her glowing eyes softened. "Among my people, courage like yours is rare. We fear the Dominion. We bow to them. But you—" She shook her head, almost in disbelief. "You are only human. And yet you fought like an army." Daniel gave a tired laugh. "Humans don't always win, but we never stop trying." Elira's heart pounded. She had seen empires rise and fall, seen entire planets bend their knees to the Dominion. But here on this small, cold world, she had found something stronger than power. She had found defiance. Outside the cave, the storm cleared. For the first time, stars glittered above the snowy sky. Elira stepped out with Daniel, the wind soft against her face. She turned to him. "They will return. Stronger. More will come." Daniel looked at the stars, his poker still in hand. His eyes burned with quiet fire. "Then let them. Let them see what humans are made of." Elira whispered, almost to herself. "The galaxy will never be the same." The hunters had thought Earth was nothing, a backwater world of fragile creatures. But tonight one human had stood against them. One human had shown that courage and stubbornness were more dangerous than any weapon. And somewhere, buried beneath ice and stone, one hunter's broken voice still hissed before fading into silence. "The galaxy will hear of humans now." Daniel tightened his grip on the poker. Elira stood beside him, silver eyes glowing against the dawn. Together they faced the horizon. For the first time in her life, Elira believed something impossible. That humans were not weak. They were different, and that difference could change everything.